All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the live stream today. We got another live stream for you guys. We're going to be going over DeAndre Hopkins, as you could tell from the title. So we're going to talk about DeAndre Hopkins, what it means that he got released on Friday afternoon. It was Cardinals ended up releasing him, taking the cap hit. Where does he go from here? Where does he go free agency wise? He's a free agent now. So we'll get into that. We're also going to get into the rankings. We readjusted all the rankings for quarterbacks, receivers, and the running backs. We haven't really got to the tight ends yet. I don't really plan on doing too much adjusting for the tight ends, but there are a couple I need to swap around, I think, based off my findings in the last couple of weeks, because we haven't really touched the tight ends since probably really 2-3 weeks ago, maybe even a month ago. So we're not going to really talk about the tight ends too much today, but we will go over DeAndre Hopkins, this guy right here. Here he is. We'll go over him first, and then we will jump into the rankings, and we're going to talk about exactly why this is interesting for us fantasy football owners, guys that play fantasy football, and what this means going forward. Also, his ADP. We're going to talk about why, what's going to happen to his ADP in terms of between like right now and in terms of once he actually signs somewhere, wherever that is. So let me turn this down a smidge. So this is from Fantasy Pros article. DeAndre Hopkins released by Arizona on Friday. This was about at noon. This happened during my last live stream right after I got off. As soon as I got done with that underdog fantasy football draft, best ball draft, I'm not even kidding, it was like 2 minutes later this was released. I didn't go live again because I had to go to bed. I had to work Friday night into Saturday morning, so that's kind of why I did not go live again and talk about this. We left it off to today. I know a lot of people have already talked about it. I really don't care if I'm a little bit behind the 8 ball. It is what it is. We're here talking about it now. I really do apologize if you guys if you guys are worried about me being late to some of these subjects. I mean, I work for a living, so if I could do this all day every day and this was my life and I could make money off of doing content 24/7, then I would. But for right now, as small as we are, we're not even really close to 1,000 subscribers yet on the channel. So I'm not gonna quit my day job or my night shift job that I work 5 days a week. We just can't afford to do that with the economic times that we're dealing with right now. So I'm gonna try to go as live and put out as much content as I can whenever I can for you guys, but I'm gonna be behind the 8 ball versus some of these other guys that are on YouTube and stuff that do this stuff. So it's just the way it is. There's just no way around it. That doesn't mean I'm gonna quit doing what I love, which is bringing you guys content, talking about fantasy football, doing fantasy football drafts, and trying to help you guys out every single way I can. We're still gonna pursue this, off of work. I do apologize for not going live yesterday. We could have done this yesterday, but we're doing it right here, right now. We got time. We're gonna jump into some content after we're done with this, with this stream. So looking for these rankings. Here we go. So DeAndre Hopkins, rumored to be on the trade block. Now will be a free agent, signed with any team heading into the 2023 season. He's 30 years old. He'll be 31, I believe, in like December. He'll be 31 basically towards the end of the year. 717 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns, 64 catches in 9 games last season. Not too bad. He's going to head. They're talking about him likely heading to a playoff contender, which should help retain his fantasy value. He recently stated top 5 quarterbacks. He was talking about Allen, Hurts, Mahomes, Jackson, and Herbert. Would also throw I would throw Cincinnati in the conversation. I do have Cincinnati on the thumbnail. They're kind of a long shot. I think really the Eagles, the Chiefs, and the Bills are really the contenders, is what I'm suspecting. There's an outside shot for Herbert. There's an outside shot for Jackson, the Ravens and the Chargers, but my gut tells me really the top 2 teams are the Bills and the Chiefs. My Chiefs. I'm a Chiefs fan. Obviously, you guys can see I wear Chiefs gear from time to time on the stream. So let's look at his ADP right now. His ADP is, it's 40. It's come up. It's already risen. It's already come up. I mean, it's at 40.4 right now. That's his ADP. I'm trying to think of what it was. Look, man, I'm gonna go back here and look at some of my drafts like weeks ago here. Let's go to our, I did one of these best ball manias a long time ago. Let's go to the first one that we did, this best ball mania that we did. And this is where you find value with this is why you draft early. This is where you can get value with some of these guys. So Hopkins went 42 right here in this draft. This must not have been that long ago. Let's go pre-draft. Let's see where he went in the pre-draft. I did 2 pre-draft best balls. I only did 2 of them. I should have done more. I'm an idiot. Let's see where he went in the first one that we did. This was back before the draft, so let's just see where he's been fluctuating for the most part. This is pre-draft, so this would have been back in April. He went 38 right here. That's pretty crazy. Wow. So I know his ADP was kind of low, and then it went up, and now it's coming back down. Obviously, it's gonna really climb down into the mid 30s, maybe even low 30s potentially, depending on where he goes. We'll get into that in a minute. Let me look at my other little board here. This is the little board pre-draft best ball that I'm looking at. So he went 38 and a 1. Let's see what he went in this one. I think it'll tell me what his ADP was. This one he went, good grief, he went 36 in this one. What do I know? I thought, who drafted him? That guy? This is the guy that drafted him, the last guy. So we can see, so his ADP was 34.1. So this is pretty crazy so his ADP was 34.1. This was back during the little board drafts. 34, so that's, look for it to come back down to 34. It's not at 34 right now, but look for it to come back down. All right, let's go back. Let's look at these poodles. This was poodle 1. This was the poodle 1. Obviously the poodle 2 just ended. If you got in any of the poodle 2 drafts, they were up for like a week, and then they just ended like yesterday. And this poodle, I know I got him in one of these poodles, I think. Maybe the poodle 2s is where I got him. Who drafted him here? So like here, he went 45 in this poodle 1 draft. This was a poodle 1, so this would have been like 2 weeks ago, maybe, roughly 2 or 3 weeks ago. I don't even know. I wish there was dates on whenever these guys were drafted. He got drafted 45th overall by the guy with the 4th pick, so that would have been this guy. His ADP at the time was 44.6. So early on back before the draft, it was 34. Then it climbed up to 44.6. This was in the poodle 1. This was about a week, 2 weeks, maybe a little more than 2 weeks ago, I believe. Let's look at some of my puppies. Let's go to my first puppy that I did. Let's see where he was at. Gosh, this team's not very good at all. This is one of my worst. This is not a very good looking team. I can already tell. He went 46 in this draft. So 45, 46. His ADP was 44. So now it's down to 40. Expect it to go down to 35, 36, 34, 35, 36. Expect it to go back down to where it originally was back during the pre-draft, you know, the pre-draft best ball leagues that we did. Expect that to be where it ends up. It could maybe even go down to like the low 30s if he goes to like the Chiefs or somebody. I would say the lowest it'll get is if he goes to the Chiefs, because he will be the clear-cut #1 guy with Kelsey, obviously, who's a tight end. But as far as the outside receiver, he will be the guy. He's not going to be opposite of Diggs like he would be in Buffalo. He's not going to be opposite of A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith like he would in Philly, or opposite of Chase and you know, and then opposite of the guys in you know, on the Chargers team. he would be the clear-cut guy in Kansas City, so his ADP would go down the most, I believe, if he were to go there. But expect 30, you know, it's at 40 right now. Expect 35, 36, 37-ish, somewhere around there. That's where his ADP is going to be. So you're talking if you have the 10, 11, or 12 pick, okay? That's about where you're going to be getting him. Because the 12 pick is going to be pick 36 and 37, so that's where he could be. Obviously 11 could be there as well. That's where he's going to be. So that's what I would expect. If you ask me, I hope he goes to the Chiefs. Obviously I'm a Chiefs fan. I would like to see my Chiefs get this receiver. They need a receiver. Scantling is not going to be the answer. They paid him too much money last year. They should have given obviously more money to Juju. And I even said this whenever it happened. I know I wasn't really giving my thoughts and my opinions on the YouTube channel at the time because I was still doing, you know, gaming content before I moved over to here. But look, I've been into fantasy football. I've been doing fantasy football since like 08, 09. So not as long as other people, but coming up on 15 years roughly of doing fantasy football as a hobby. Really, you know, and then obviously I've gotten more serious into it really since like 15, 16, you know, for money and stuff. You know, I focused on it you know, on it a little bit once 2015 came around the corner, but I was still in the military at the time. I was still in the Marine Corps, so obviously I had, you know, I didn't probably put as much attention on it as I could have, but you know, the Chiefs haven't had a receiver like this in a long time, like a really long time. You could maybe say Dwayne Bowe, but really Bowe was obviously not Hopkins. But the Chiefs don't really have that history of going and getting a number one outside guy that is, and you know, Hopkins is a little older. He's going to be 31 at the end of the year, but he still has a little bit left in the tank. Okay, he still has plenty of football left in the tank. He's got at least another year. I would say maybe 2 years. Maybe 2 years. It's going to be, you know, a close call, but and my argument for, look, the argument for Hopkins is, look, the Chiefs are very pass heavy. The Bills are very pass heavy. They could, you know, and even the Eagles have a pretty dynamic offense as well. All of these teams have really good offenses. That's why he wants to go here. That's why he wants to go to the Chiefs, to the Bills, to the Eagles. Maybe even throw in the Chargers or throw in the Bengals. They all have really good offenses. They are all top 10 offenses in the National Football League. You might even be able to argue top 5. And he wants to win a Super Bowl. All these teams that are really good on offense that we're talking about, they're all Super Bowl contenders as well. They also all have elite quarterbacks as well. This is why these are the guys he's talking about. These are the teams that he wants to go to. And we've seen what he can do when he's in a dynamic offense like he was in Houston for a number of years with a really good Deshaun Watson for 2 or 3 years, I believe, once they drafted Watson. He can do it all on the outside for the most part, and he still has stuff left in the tank. He still has some juice left in the tank, okay? And we can look here. I'll pull this up for you guys so you guys can see it for the most part. So we'll move Hopkins here. So we'll keep him down here. So Hopkins is, I obviously didn't adjust, so I didn't adjust this. This is not the rankings, okay? This is just a board with all of these guys' stats on there. I have not adjusted the receiver rankings on this particular board yet. I've done it for the QB and the running backs. I haven't done it for the receivers yet. So don't drill me into the ground on this, okay? These are not the rankings. I have Hopkins above some of these guys that are up here, okay? On the actual rankings. This is just a board with certain statistics, key statistics that we look at in receivers. Now, as far as the color chart goes, this is the color chart as far as some of these particular, really it's just total targets that I have the color charts for. I actually am going to do it with the red zone targets, which is this category right here. The color chart, purple's elite, green is great, yellow is about above average, silver, gray is average, orange is caution, and then red is obviously danger, don't draft, it's obviously bad. That's as far as the player notes go. Gold, whatever gold, you know, gold, brown, whatever this right here, this is kind of like the red area as far as rankings for some of the you know, for this particular category, which is total targets. So Hopkins is right here. He's right here below this black line right here, this bolded black line. He is, you know, he's down the list here a little bit, but this is obviously not the rankings. But we go back to 2022, 29.4% target share. That's awesome. This will be 30, 31, 29 roughly. It's going to be in that elite category if he goes to the Chiefs, 100%. It could maybe come down a smidge if he goes to any of the other two places we were talking about, Philly and Buffalo. We're just going to have to see what happens. We look at, let's just say he goes to Buffalo, okay? Let's say he goes to Buffalo. Obviously, we know like what this number and these numbers are going to be when he's with Kansas City. 18.5% red zone target share from last year, 96 targets. Obviously, that's 10.7 a game, by the way. That is 10.7 per game last year. Red zone targets, he had 5. Air yards, right on 1,000. Right on 1,000 air yards. That's not bad for, what was it, 9 games that he played, right? He played 9 games, so... I thought I had the target rank on here. Red zone target rank, you know, we don't even care about this. Look, he's going to have a better quarterback this year. If he goes to any of these 3 destinations we're talking about, his top 3 in Buffalo, Philly, and Kansas City. Snap share, he's playing 87% of the snaps. But what I want to get into, look, and his route participation's off the charts, 95.4%. But let's go to Gabe Davis. This is Gabe Davis. So Gabe Davis, 92 targets last year, 18.2%, 19.2 in the red zone. So this is the guy he's taking over for if he goes to Buffalo. You got Diggs on one side, Hopkins is on the other side. And really Dalton Kincaid, and you could say Dawson Knox. They're going to be affected by this too if he goes to Buffalo. Okay, no doubt in my mind he will. I'm going to scroll down so you guys can see here a little bit. So Gabe Davis, 92 targets. Obviously, I believe Davis played, I'd have to look up exactly how many games Davis played. I want to say it was in the ballpark of 15, 16, or if not all of the games last year. So you know, you look at Hopkins up here, 96 to his 92. He's commanding just about all of Davis's targets, and he's also going to command some of Knox's, some of Kincaid's. He's going to command some of their targets as well. Okay, he's not just taking from Davis. Davis is still going to have targets, but 92 is going to come down to. It's going to come down to like the 40s, if I had to guess, like mid 40s. Maybe low 50s if he's lucky. But if a healthy Stephon Diggs and a healthy DeAndre Hopkins, if they are on the team healthy for the whole season, this is not going to be good for Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis is going to fall way down the draft board. and you know, he's going to be an avoid player for the most part, because he's going to fall, but he's not going to fall as much as he needs to fall. And I will not be drafting him whatsoever. I really don't have any shares of him right now anyways, but just because of where his ADP is right now. But that's what we're looking at. We're looking at him taking targets away from Davis, and he's going to be taking targets away from Kincaid, from Dawson Knox as well. I mean, he's going to have to, especially if he stays healthy all year, because he's going for probably over 100 targets, if I had to guess. 92, Gabe Davis, 94.2% target share. Or no, this is route participation. 94.2% route participation. A lot of that's going to go, that's just going to go straight to Hopkins. Hopkins will be in the 95% of route participation. You see all these air yards, almost 1,400 for Davis. Like he's just transferring all this over to Hopkins for the most part, unless injury occurs, obviously. 14 red zone targets. A lot of them are going to be going to Hopkins. A lot of these, he's basically handing them over to Hopkins, and he's like, here you go. These are yours now, you know. Oh, you want my locker too? Okay, yeah, let me get all my stuff. You know, yeah, we'll just make this your locker now. He's literally going to be like moving in and taking his stuff, basically, when Hopkins goes to Buffalo, if he goes to Buffalo. Chiefs, Buffalo, Eagles. That's what we're really looking at ideally. They will make and you know, people are like, well, they don't have the money. You know, the Chiefs don't have the money. The Eagles, the Bills, they don't have the money. They'll find a way to get this guy money, okay? And you know, they're gonna put incentives in his contract. He just got owed a bunch of money from Arizona that they end up taking the cap hit. He will go to one of these places for less money, okay? Then what? He will go at a discount. I promise you, he will. He wants to win a ring. He knows the 3 or 4 teams, you know, that are capable, that are ready to win right now, or just got done winning, and you know, in my Kansas City Chiefs. This is why this is the list. They have elite quarterbacks, elite coaches for the most part, and they're ready to win right now. They've been ready to win for really the last 2 years or more, depending on which team you talk about. So that is why these are the teams that we're talking about. And you know, it's not like we're like, oh yeah, he's gonna go here, go here. We know he's already told us which teams are on his radar. So final thoughts on this is like, look, red zone target, especially if he goes to, you know, especially if he goes to the Chiefs, his red zone targets are going to dramatically come up. And this you know, this target share could be easily in the 25 to 30% range if he goes to the Chiefs. The Bills, it might be a smidge lower, but it's going to be around 20, anywhere from 20 to 25% as well in Buffalo. The Eagles would be a little more complicated if he went to Philly, because they got, you know, really, I don't know what's going to happen if he goes to Philly, because we're talking about AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, who are first and second round guys for the most part in fantasy. Smith's kind of a late second or early third round wide receiver. And then obviously AJ Brown is about late first, early second if you get lucky, in terms of where he goes. It'll be a shakeup if he goes to Philly. Look for AJ Brown to come down a little bit. Look for even Smith. Smith will be the guy really who I think drops the most. He's gonna end up sliding down to like 30 ADP, 31 ADP maybe. So look, Hopkins is a guy that I am looking for, though. As long as he doesn't jump too high, I'm still looking for Hopkins in fantasy football. I've been trying to get him right now. Obviously, I haven't done too many drafts. I don't really want to do another $25 one for the Best Ball Mania, and I don't want to do the other expensive ones. I'm waiting for the puppies to come out, another puppy to come out, or there might be like the $10 ones that come out here soon. We'll see on Underdog Fantasy, but so I'm looking to try to maybe look, if you're looking to stack Hopkins, if you're doing drafts right now and you still have well, I guess the poodles are done now, but if you were able to do a couple of poodles Friday or Saturday, you had to get about the number 6, the number 7, or really the number 8 pick. It really just depends. Maybe even 5. But if you were able to, I wasn't able to because I had already maxed out my entries on the poodle. I already had 20 entries, so I wasn't able to do another draft. I was trying to do another one when I found out that he got released. But I was gonna, you might try to stack Kelsey, get Mahomes in the second round. This is if you have pick 5, 6, 7, or 8 roughly. It obviously, you got to get lucky and maybe you got to try it a couple of different times, but you go get Kelsey, you go get Mahomes, and then you could probably still get Hopkins in round 4. His ADP is 40, so that would be the guy who has the 5th pick, the 4th pick. The 5th pick would be 41. You maybe pick him at like 42 or 43 if you have the 5th, 6th, or 7th pick or whatever. And then you could have got somebody else in the 3rd round. You get probably a running back, obviously. Somebody like Najee Harris or Breece Hall or something like that along the lines of that. But you and then you could also try to go, if you think he's going to go to Buffalo, you could also try a Buffalo stack. You go get Diggs, you get Josh Allen. This is if you're kind of towards the back of the if you're towards the back of the draft, like 9, 10, 11, you go get Diggs. You reach a little bit on Josh Allen, and then you reach on DeAndre Hopkins in round 3. Because you probably, well, actually, I say you reach on him. You don't need to reach on him. You probably get him with your 4th round pick. Because that would be 39th overall. 39 for 40th overall if you have pick 9 or 10. So really, yeah, so you could do it. So for the most part, you could go with that Buffalo stack. You could go with the Chiefs stack. Now, obviously, if he ends up signing with a team before one of these next drafts comes out, I mean, you could obviously do it in the Best Ball Mania drafts right now. That's if you want to spend $25 a pop on each draft. Because, like I said, it may not happen the first draft, especially if you get to number 1 or the number 2 pick. You're not going to go that route. But if not, if you don't want to do it in the $25 Best Ball Mania drafts, then you're going to have to wait until one of these puppies comes out or another cheaper draft comes out, a cheaper contest. So, but does he sign with a team before they come out with another contest is the question. And if he does sign with a team, say he signs with the Bills or the Chiefs before another contest comes out, now everybody knows, you know what I mean? There's no chance to really kind of snag him because his ADP is more than likely going to be rising by then. It's probably going to be in the mid 30s to the, it's 40 right now. It could climb to 37, 36, 35 ADP. So, and at that point, you're looking at you're going to have the 10, 11, or 12 pick to really get him in. And now you're going to be getting him in round 3, early round 4, versus the middle of round 4, which is where his ADP was. Like a week ago, obviously, it was about 44, 45 about a week ago. So maybe a week and a half ago. Now it's coming up because of the news. The news came out Friday. Now it's really going to come up. So look, if you were able to get Kelsey, Mahomes, and then Hopkins in round 4 a couple weeks ago, or with the Buffalo guys, then you are ahead of schedule. Let's just put it that way. You're ahead of schedule. And obviously you don't want to do it on every team, but you want to have a team or two here where you stack those guys because you're going to look like a genius when he signs with either team. If you have that stack, you're going to look really, really smart. And you got him at a discount because now people that are going to want to try to have that stack, say he signs with Kansas City on Tuesday or Wednesday. And then let's say they come out with another contest, or even if you just do the regular Best Ball Mania contest or one of the other contests, if you want to spend a bunch of money, you know what I mean? If you want to go with that stack, everybody else that's drafting around you knows what you're doing at that point, and then there's chances you're going to get sniped. You're going to see Hopkins maybe get reached on in the middle of the 3rd round, potentially. or even the early third round, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to go with that stack now that, you know. So hopefully, what I'm hoping for is I'm hoping for another contest to come out. Hopefully the Puppy 2 comes out here in like a week or so, maybe a week and a half. I don't know when they're going to drop it. I'm suspecting they're going to drop it here soon. If not, they're going to drop the $10 ones. I forget what they call the $10 entry ones. Maybe, you know, who knows? Maybe they drop a super flex draft here soon. I know they should be doing another super flex here soon as well. Obviously that'll be a little different because you're looking at 2 quarterbacks, but hopefully he waits about a week or so to maybe sign with a team. So maybe if you have that opportunity to try to stack him with some of these other guys, and you're like, okay, he's going to go to Kansas City, hopefully I'm going to take the risk and stack him with Mahomes and Kelsey, and then if it ends up happening after you already did your draft, you look like a genius. So I do think Kansas City is the best spot for him. I really do. And I'm not saying that because I'm a Chiefs fan. I'm not saying that because, you know, bias or anything. I just think it is the best spot for him. We don't have a receiver. I'll sit here and admit to you, like, we don't have a true, like, #1 receiver. I think the guy we drafted in Rashee Rice could be that guy down the road, but he's not a true #1 receiver. Like Scantling's not a true #1. Hardman, or no, not McCole Hardman. He's gone. Tony and Moore. Tony and Sky Moore, they're smaller guys that, you know, they're not guys that are staying outside and being a possession receiver on the outside. They're slot guys. They're guys that you can use in you know, a number of different ways, coming out of the backfield, throwing screens to them, getting them out in space. As far as a route runner with a really good route tree that can run every single route, that can win coverage, that can win man coverage. We look at DeAndre Hopkins here. This is why I love Hopkins so much. I'm gonna highlight this here in black. Let's highlight this here in black. These numbers don't lie, okay? This is one of the key numbers we're talking about right here. I'll even blow this up here. Let's blow this up so you guys can actually see this. This right here that is blown up, this is right here. This is route win rate. What was his rank in route win rate amongst all the receivers? What was his win rate, route win rate versus man coverage? And what was his rank amongst all the receivers for his win rate versus man? This is what they are. I don't even have to say it to you guys. I don't even have to say it. Just look at it. 51.8% total route win rate. He played 9 games last year. That was top 5. So out of all the receivers in the league, he is top 5 in winning routes. That's zone and man combined. That's against zone coverage and man coverage. In man coverage, there was one guy that was better than him. He won 47% of the time against man coverage. That was #2 in the league. That was better than this guy above him, and the guy 2 more spots above that guy. That would be Tyler Lockett and Calvin Ridley. And the Calvin Ridley number, this was from 2 years ago when he only played 5 games. So he only had a small sample size. So obviously this one's not quite correct. This is Calvin Ridley back in 2021 when he only played 5 games. You go down here. Now obviously I like the guy who's #1. This is Isaiah Hodgins, who's #1. Now Isaiah Hodgins, as you can see, he only had 47 targets right here, and he came on late, so really his sample size isn't as big as somebody like Hopkins or anybody else that played more games. So really he could be the #1 guy. Maybe if Hodgins had a bigger sample size, maybe he comes, you know what I mean? Maybe his numbers come down a little bit, back down to earth, but they were still actually pretty good. I mean, 56.5%, 53. I wouldn't say Hodgins comes like I wouldn't say if Hodgins played a whole year, he would have been you know, he wouldn't have, it's not like he would have fell all the way down to 40th overall as far as winning routes, but there's a good chance that Hopkins could have been better than him in man coverage, winning routes against man coverage, and really maybe even winning routes overall. Look, the guy, I know the guy's 30, he's going to be 31 at the end of the year, but this right here is a telltale sign. This right here that's bolded, it's bordered. This is a telltale sign that he can still win routes overall, and he can win. He was second best in winning routes against man coverage. These are telltale signs for a receiver of whether or not they're falling off, or if they're still good, if they still got something left in the tank. Okay. We look at some of these other guys, and now there's obviously factors for receivers. Let's just say, like, there's some receivers that may not be quite as good in this category that haven't fallen off, but maybe they have a bad quarterback. This was with Kyler Murray, and I think Kyler Murray played 13 games, so Kyler missed really the last 4 or 5 weeks. I don't know if it depends if they had a bye. He basically missed the last 4 games of the season, though, and this was still what he was able to do with backup quarterback. Let me scroll over. This is still what he was able to do, winning routes with a backup quarterback. So, what do you think he's going to do when Mahomes is throwing him the ball? What do you think he's going to do if Josh Allen in that offense, if he's getting the ball thrown to him by those guys? He's still going to be able to catch balls and win routes and produce in fantasy. So, I'm not worried. Like, look, if he can do this with Trace McSorley, third string quarterback, right, with the Cardinals, what do you think he's going to do when Mahomes is throwing him the ball? And he's getting more red zone looks, more than likely, because they have an offense that scores more, that's always in the red zone. Whether you're talking about, doesn't matter who you're talking about. If you're talking about Philly, Kansas City, Buffalo, they all are top 5, top 10 teams when it comes to scoring the ball, when it comes to getting in the red zone. So his red zone targets are going to go up. His targets and his receptions in general are probably going to go up, or they're going to stay about the same where they are. You see right here, 10.7 targets per game last year, 96 targets, 95.3% route participation. It's green. It's green for a reason. That's good. Green means good. That means he's amongst the best of the elite receivers, you know, or of all the receivers in the league for the most part. This isn't every single receiver, but this is the top 91 I have, you know, on my draft board. And everybody else below the top, you know, everybody else 92 and below, we don't really care about. They're guys that aren't really even getting drafted. But he's still got stuff, he's still got juice left in the tank, is the bottom line here. That's the bottom line. He's got juice left in the tank. And if he goes to an elite offense, which is probably what's going to happen, Buffalo, Philly, Kansas City, maybe Baltimore, maybe the Chargers, maybe the Cowboys, who knows? But right here, like I said, just there's only so many receivers that have a better target share than he does. And he's, like I said, 25% is elite. You get close to that 30%, then you're amongst the best. There's only a couple of guys that had, let's see who had more. London had 29.4. Adams had 32.6, which I believe is the highest last year. And then you're talking Tyreek Hill at 31.6, Cooper Kupp 31%. And he's slightly better than Chase and Jefferson, who were 29.3. He was 29.4, they were 29.3. So basically the same. 29% for AJ Brown. You know, CeeDee Lamb, Diggs 28.7, 28.4%. He's amongst the top 10. Really top 5, I'm guessing. Yeah, really top 5 in terms of target share. So the red zone target share isn't quite as good, but that's because he played for a bad team. He plays for a better team. Where's he at? He plays for a better team, and this is going to come up from the 18.5%. This is going to come up at least into the 20s. So Now we can have a conversation about whether or not is he worth a 3rd round pick. Really, I think it just depends on where he goes, and it depends on what you got with your first 2 picks in round 1 and 2. I would obviously love him in round 4. We may not see him in round 4 once he signs with the team. His ADP is going to come down to basically the end of the 3rd round. You might get lucky. I wouldn't even say get lucky, because really the guy who's picking last has pick 36 and pick 37, which 37 is the first pick of the 4th round. So you take him at 37, really you could argue he's basically a 3rd round player. The guy just took him in the 4th round because he had back-to-back picks and he decided to pick somebody else instead. But he's going to be basically a 3-4 turn pick at the end of round 3 into the beginning of round 4 pick. His ADP is 40 right now, but that's going to come down when he signs. I promise you, it's going to come down to the mid 30s. And here's the thing: when he starts getting picked at like 36, 37, which is the guy who has the last pick, if there's somebody who really wants him that has like pick 8 or pick 9, which would be pick 32 and pick 33, they're going to take him because they know they're not going to see him in round 4. So they're going to snag him at the 32, 33 spot for the most part. And you might even see him go in like 29th overall or 30th overall if somebody really wants him and they know they're not going to see him in round 4. That's also going to cause his ADP to climb, because they're going to be drafting him earlier than expected because they want him, because they know they won't see him in the 4th round anymore. So he's going to be about really in the end of the 3rd round pick. If I'm being honest with you guys, he's going to be into the 3rd round. He was middle of the 4th. So he'll be into the 3rd round, maybe even middle of the 3rd round if somebody decides to reach on him. So Jeff, quit calling me. So with that being said, hey, that's what we're gonna close. I mean, we're gonna continue on here with the stream, but we're gonna move off of Hopkins. I just wanted to go over Hopkins with you guys. If you guys have any thoughts, any opinions, any questions about what I think or what you think, let me know in the comment section below right now. If you guys have any other questions about fantasy football, ask me right now as well. It can be about anything, a trade, general thoughts on particular draft spots. If you guys want to know what players you should maybe go and get, but we're gonna go over these advanced stats. I'm just gonna go over the rankings. Let's just go over the rankings here for the most part. I have this right here. Let's hide this. Let's go over the QBs. So we adjusted the QBs. I hope you guys can see this. I'm hoping you guys can see this here. I know it's a little small. It's not quite as blown up as it could be maybe, but I'm waiting for this to come up here. All right, I'm pretty sure you guys can see it. I'm hoping. All right, so we got Mahomes 1, Burrow 2, Hurts 3, Allen 4. No real change. We moved Herbert up to 5. We moved Jackson up. We dropped Fields down to 8 or to 7. Lawrence is 8. Deshaun Watson is 9. That caps off tier 1 and tier 2. As you guys can see, I have the tiers over here on the right side, which tier they are in. And then 10, we got Rodgers at the top, just inside the top 10. Kirk Cousins 11, Tua 12, Geno 13, 14 Dak Prescott, 15 Goff, 16 Daniel Jones. Look, let's start at the top here. I really want to throw Joe Burrow in the 1 spot, but obviously this Hopkins trade I might shuffle some things around depending on what happens with, or not the trade, but if he signs with one of these teams, obviously this can affect if I shuffle some of these quarterbacks. Basically, look, Hopkins is going to improve whichever quarterback that he signs with, you know, whichever team he signs with, and that quarterback specifically, their ADP is also going to be affected by this as well. They're going to come up a little bit more than what they already are. Mahomes really needs this guy. I'll be honest. The Chiefs are going to need this guy more than just about anybody. The Chiefs have the toughest schedule. They are playing. They are negative rest days pretty much from like week 9 on, week 10 on, I believe it is. They are negative rest days like every single week, basically to finish off their season. So the Chiefs are gonna have a tough year this year. Just trust me on this. They're gonna have a tough year this year. Mahomes isn't probably gonna be quite as good as last year in fantasy, I don't think, if I'm being quite honest. That could change, obviously. I could have maybe a little different opinion on that if Hopkins signs with the Chiefs. That's gonna help him. I'm gonna feel a little better about his fantasy outlook. I still think he's a top 5 quarterback, really top 3 quarterback for the most part in fantasy, but there's a chance he doesn't finish number 1 overall in the quarterback department if they don't get Hopkins. I'm just going to throw that out there. Really, I want to put Herbert more than, you know, I got him 5th ranked, but Herbert could really finish top 3, top 4. He could finish in this tier 1 easily. Don't get it twisted. Really, I just want to see, I really want to see what happens with this Hopkins deal, you know, where he ends up going. I will shuffle things based off of what he does here, if it happens in, you know, this week or next week or whenever it happens. So I'm not as high in Josh Allen. I got Josh Allen down here at 4, obviously. I just like Burrow. I think Burrow wins MVP this year. I think, look, he's elite in all these like, look, this is also, so the purple is elite stuff here. This is about the top of the top here. Let me pull up this other, you guys cannot see it. Let me pull it up here. So the purple is the elite of the elite here. Pass attempts, obviously Mahomes had the second most. The first most was Herbert. This is why I like Herbert. He had the, I think it was, yeah, he had the most pass attempts. Actually, he had the second most. Who had the most? Somebody else had more, I thought. No, he had the most pass attempts, but he was second in, I thought somebody else had more pass attempts than him, actually. Maybe not. But red zone attempts. I mean, Mahomes obviously had the most, 126, but he was over 100. Remember, Herbert had a depleted receiving core for a lot of the season, for at least half the season. And he was missing a couple of guys on the offensive line last year too. So now they got Kellen Moore coming over from Dallas, who's a pass heavy offensive coordinator. They're going to be slinging it like it's Texas Tech, okay? They're going to be slinging it like, you know, whenever you watch their games, you're going to think you're watching Texas Tech from college football, where they literally just air raid offense. They're passing it 70%, 75% of the time. They don't really have a great between the tackles running back at all. So Eckler's never ran for 1,000 yards in his career, at least like for a season. So you factor that in. You know, they're going to be slinging it as much as anybody in the NFL this year. And that's going to lead to fantasy production, obviously, as long as he stays healthy. He even had the rib injury. He had the rib injury last year, and he still played 17. He still played every single game. So he's going to be healthier. His offensive line is going to be healthier. And he's going in with a healthier receiving core. If Hopkins goes to the Chargers, you might see Herbert win MVP. I might change my MVP pick from Burrow to Herbert, obviously, but because that would be insane. I would say really they're the the Chiefs the Chiefs need Hopkins the most. The Bills probably need him the second most, and then the Chargers would be the third team that really needs him, I think, just because I don't know about Keenan Allen. Mike Williams has also had injury issues. They would need him just for the depth on in the receiving core on offense. So obviously the Bills need him too, because that might put the Bills over the top to actually get to the Super Bowl. Whether or not they win it, it's another story, but the Bills, I think, are going to be fighting harder than anybody really to get to get Hopkins, because Diggs is unhappy. Obviously Allen can't stand how they've especially 2 years ago, they just losing to the Chiefs, losing to my Chiefs. So this could put them over the top, and I think they're gonna be one of the teams like really pursuing Hopkins the most. They're gonna be throwing out offers. Really, I wouldn't be shocked if the Bills give him the highest offer. They find a way to give him the highest offer. So now I moved Fields down just because I like Herbert better. I just do. Some people may not agree with that. Some people, look, I just like Herbert better. This is why too. The red zone attempts, the pass attempts. I don't care about the rushing. I know there's going to be people out there. Well, what about her? Or what about Justin Fields' rushing ability? Here's the thing about his rushing ability. Let me go over to his rushing ability here. You guys see this? Let me come down a percentage here. Oh, no way, you guys can't see this. Okay, either way, you can see most of it right here. So the rushing, so Herbert ran the ball 54 times. Obviously the second most was Fields, 160, 1143 rushing yards. He's not going to do this again, okay? 8 touchdowns rushing. He had 20, I calculated how many red zone rushes they had. You guys can't see this. He had 28 rushing attempts in the red zone, which I believe was second most. The only one who had more was Jalen Hurts at 43. And but this 1143, you're not going to see that again this year. You might see 7, 8, maybe 900 yards rushing. We'll see. I doubt it. If I had to put a number on it, give me like 800, 850 maybe, which is still good. I'm not saying that's bad. Okay, I'm not saying that's, but you're talking 300 less rushing yards. Okay, that's 30 points in fantasy right there. Just for rush yards, that's 30 points. They went out and got Foreman, who's a big goal line back. They went and got Roshan Johnson in the draft, who's also 6 foot, 220, a big between the tackles kind of back. He's not going to be running the ball as much as what people think he is this year. They're trying. Look, he missed like 2 games last year, right? He missed 2 games. Jackson missed 5. Lamar, who I got him right above. These guys are good. Look, especially Lamar, because he got his money now, but there's going to be less designed runs for these guys. I'm not saying they don't run the ball, okay? I'm not saying they don't run and use their legs effectively. I'm just saying this number here, this 1143, which is amazing, this is going to come down this year, because they're not going to risk him getting hurt like they did last year. Last year they risked him getting hurt for the most part, because he used his legs a lot. And look, he had to because his offensive line wasn't the greatest. That's why they went out and got an offensive lineman in the draft. They're trying to protect him, and they're also going to protect him in the play calling to keep him from running. I'm not saying he's not going to run. He's going to go run for 7, 8, 850 roughly. But that's 30 less points in fantasy. Now, can he make up that fantasy point drop off in the rushing game with his arm? Potentially, but let's not get it twisted. Herbert's going to have a better year as well. He's going to have a better year. He threw more than double the passes that Fields throw. And I'm not saying Fields can't throw more. He'll throw more than 318 passes roughly. Maybe he'll creep towards 400 potentially. Maybe even a little more than 400. We don't know. I wouldn't get too carried away with how much he throws more than what he threw last year, but he plays a couple more games. You're looking at about 400 to 420 passes versus his 318 last year. But he's not eclipsing this number. And the rushing numbers are going to come down. He had 8 rushing touchdowns. Maybe that comes down to 3 or 4 or 5 maybe. They did go get 2 big running backs that can run downhill between the tackles. Maybe they start using those guys a little more to protect Fields. This is all good for Fields. It's not the greatest for him in terms of fantasy is the problem. And that's why I got Herbert above him. I'm projecting Lamar Jackson to probably play more than 12 games this year. Maybe he gets 15, 16. Maybe he gets a full season in 17. They're going to pass the ball more. They got more weapons in the receiving game for him this year. So give me Lamar Jackson slightly over Fields this year as well. And that's why I've moved these guys. I moved Fields down to move Lamar and Herbert up 1 notch. And I'm taking those guys over Fields in fantasy this year, as of right now, unless something happens here in training camp or in mini camp or in the preseason games. This is what it is right now. Like I said, these change over time depending on what happens, what comes up in the news. Like, yeah, I'm taking Lamar Jackson. I'm putting him all the way down at the bottom if he tears his ACL in 2 weeks. Like, and I'm allowed to do that, you know. But for the most part, these are where the rankings are for me. You can agree, you can disagree. Maybe we have a couple of guys, you know, maybe somebody's got Dak at 12 or 11 instead of 14 or whatever. But for the most part, the tiers is where it's at. These tiers are pretty correct in my opinion. You got tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. You could argue maybe one of these guys, look, any of these guys from tier 2 could jump to tier 1 this year easily. But this is what it is right now. Going down to tier 3, let's go as far as Trevor Lawrence and Watson go, to finish off tier 2. I just like Lawrence went from being the 24th best PPR quarterback to, well, you know, you can argue PPR or standard, it doesn't matter, but he went from being 24th to 8th. Deshaun Watson, I worry about Deshaun Watson a little bit. We'll see if he can bounce back. Let's see if those 6 games that he had last year, let's see, you know, he's getting a full off season, and let's see if maybe he returns to the Houston Texan form that we're accustomed to seeing. Whether or not he does that or not, I don't know, but that's why I don't have him higher on the list. I got to see it first. I got to see it to believe it. This was not very good from him last year. So, I mean, he threw 7 touchdowns to 5 picks. That's not the greatest. Obviously, his air yards, pass yards, and all that, so we don't really care about that because he only played 6 games. But you look at this right here: red zone passer rating, 53. Or no, this was passer rating versus zone, 53. 92.6 versus man coverage. Those are not the greatest. Those are not good for him. So, true completion percentage, 65.6. That's not good either. Obviously, it's in the red here. So, you know, you go back to Herbert. Look at Herbert. His true passer completion percentage right here. True completion percentage. It's like second best. The only one who had one that was better was Murray. But Murray only played 13 games as well, so he could have been the best true completion percentage amongst all the quarterbacks. There's so much to like about Herbert, so Moving down to tier 3 though, let's go Rodgers, Cousins too. Let's talk about these guys. The reason why people should like Rodgers is he's in the blue category here, which is, these are the categories you got elite. Really this should be blue. Let me change this to blue. And then yeah. So really you got the elite quarterbacks, must have, you got great quarterbacks that are good picks as far as this category, this stat category that we're talking about goes. Passing attempts, he's right there with Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence, Geno, Jared Goff from last year. Carr barely kind of made the list. This is basically between 500 and 600 passing attempts. It's not to the Kirk Cousins, the Herbert, the Burrow, the Mahomes level. These are the guys that are 600 and more. Those are guys that are passing the ball a lot, which equals more fantasy points. But Rodgers is pretty sneaky here, because if he can be better and on a better team, the Jets are better than the Packers. They have a better defense. They have better receivers. They got Green Bay's number 1 receiver really in Lazard, which really you could argue number 1 or number 2. Watson is obviously the number 1 guy now, but he got one of their top 2 receivers to come with him to the Jets. And then he's got Garrett Wilson now, who is, in my opinion, a top 5 receiver in the league this year. And he's going to pass the ball a decent amount. He's got a really good receiving back, really a do-it-all running back in Breece Hall. If he stays healthy this year, he can benefit in the passing game as well. He's got McCole Hardman, who's not bad. He's also got, like I said, Lazard. I don't know what they're going to do quite with Corey Davis. Randall Cobb will contribute a little bit here and there, not too much, but they're going to pass the ball nonetheless. I think he stays in this category. He passes probably 500 times or more, barring injury. But that's top 10. Deep attempts. This is also really good. This is what you want your quarterback to do, is throw the ball deep. Russell Wilson down here was the only guy who threw the ball deeper more times. So he was the second best deep attempt quarterback, deep pass attempt, which is 20 yards or more. And he had almost 20 more than Mahomes last year. So this equals fantasy points, especially when you got a guy like Garrett Wilson on your team that you're throwing it to, who's a sub 4.4 guy who can run just about every route. There's going to be plenty of opportunities for Rodgers to be throwing the ball deep. Red zone attempts, he's also in the great category, 81. Not quite 200, but this could reach 100 in this offense. This could reach 100 attempts or more in this offense, which would get him into the elite category amongst quarterbacks. He's still top 10 in this category though, so Rodgers is a little underrated this year. I know people want to doubt the Jets, but look, the Jets got a pretty easy schedule. They got a lot of rest advantage games. A lot of people don't know that they have rest advantage in a lot of their games, whereas the Chiefs are like the exact opposite. So this is why I got Rodgers ahead of Cousins and Tua and Geno. It was tough. You could probably mix and match these guys a little bit. Really, you could maybe argue Watson could be a little lower here. We're just going to have to see. Like I said, with Watson, I'm going to have to see it before I believe it, kind of. That's kind of my philosophy on Watson. I don't say avoid him, but there's some key things here that you look with Rodgers that you might go, I might take Rodgers over Watson. And Rodgers goes about 2 rounds later than Watson for the most part. He goes about 20 to 25 picks later in redraft. So, and Cousins, look, I know Cousins is on the last year of his deal, but they just added Jordan Addison. They got Jefferson, who's a number 1 receiver in the league, probably the number 1, at least according to last year. I think Chase will be that guy this year, but he's a top 2 receiver in the league. He's got Hawkinson to throw the ball to. Ever since Hawkinson came over from Detroit, their offense was even more efficient. And then they just added Addison. Madison's going to be probably better back than Cook in the backfield once he becomes the number 1 guy, which will happen once they release Cook here probably this week. I don't think the Vikings are quite as good as last year. Look, they won a lot of close games. Their record's not going to be quite as good as last year. More than likely, they're going to finish probably 10-7, roughly. You know, in that ballpark. You know, 9-8. They're gonna, you know, they're winning all those close games last year. That's not going to happen this year. More than likely, they're going to lose some of those this year. I don't think lightning strikes twice. But Cousins is not a bad option. Red zone attempts, he's in the elite category here. You know, this was really the only person that had more than him was Mahomes. This could come down a smidge, but it's going to be roughly in the same ballpark of what it is here. Pass attempts, they're going to be pretty pass heavy again this year, I believe. This could also come down a smidge, but it's going to be in this purple elite category amongst the quarterbacks that are in the league that are throwing 600 or more pass attempts, obviously barring injury. But he's playing for a contract too, so keep that in mind. This is the last year on his deal. They haven't re-signed him. He's playing for a contract either to re-sign with Minnesota or go somewhere else, so he's going to have to perform. Air yards, second most, or actually third most in the league. Money throws, not too bad. You know, you worry about, look, here's the deal. And, you know, you look at his passer rating versus zone and man coverage. It's not the greatest, but there's no red category here. So that's good. He still has a little bit left in the tank, even though he's getting a little older. Now, there's no rushing upside with him whatsoever at all. Obviously, there's no rushing upside, but he's a decent value at his ADP, and you can still go with Cousins. Really, I think a lot of the people that won the best ball leagues last year, they had Cousins on their team. I'm pretty sure. A lot of the guys that won last year had Cousins. Cousins can be, you know, I want him as my second quarterback. You could maybe gamble on him taking him as your first quarterback. I would try to pair him up with Rodgers, though, if I did that, because they have different buys and they're both, you know, you don't want to have just Cousins. You need to have one of these other guys in the same tier with him, because you more than likely missed out on all of these guys already. So that's kind of my take on Cousins and Rodgers, but these are still good options to go with. It's very underrated value that a lot of people don't realize. And for the most part, I think they stay healthy this year because they don't run the ball. You know, they're not out running outside the pocket. So unless they just absolutely get their clock cleaned by somebody coming off the edge, you know, or if they get taken down in a weird way where their knee bends back a weird way or something, they're going to stay healthy for the most part. And quarterbacks are protected so much, especially Rodgers. Like, Rodgers is an NFL darling. They're going to protect him in New York this year, trust me. They have a bunch of primetime games, kind of like Denver did last year. The refs will make sure they take care of Rodgers. I wouldn't worry about injury with really either of these two guys for the most part. They're going to throw the ball a ton too. So good value really in tier 3 as our tier 3 quarterbacks. These guys could be tier 2 quarterbacks. So don't get it twisted here. I know they're in tier 3, but really you could argue Watson comes down. Watson, really inside the top 10, I worry about Watson probably more than just about anybody, because we don't know if he returns to form. So, all right, Tua, Geno, Dak, Goff, Jones. You could probably mix and match these guys just about in any order. Really, it's a preference of who do you like. You know, who do you like, who do you not like. But Tua, we obviously worry about his concussion injuries, obviously. And then we obviously worry about the Cowboys with Mike McCarthy throwing, or, you know, calling plays now. But I will argue they got Cooks in the offseason. Cooks is actually a lot better than people think. He's not the greatest, but he's a lot better than people think. I've looked at some of his metrics, some of his stats from last year. He can still win routes against defenders, even though he's a little older. And now he's playing second you know, he's playing Robin to CD Lamb's Batman now, so that's going to also help. Cooks is, you know, I think Cooks is really a little bit of a sleeper. And so, question is, how much do they throw the ball? Now that Kellen Moore's gone, how much do they throw the ball? And then obviously Dak missed what? He missed 5 games, right? He missed really 6, you know, because he played half of week 1 when he got injured against Tampa Bay. So this is going to come up. I don't think Dak's a terrible quarterback, but the picks are obviously a little bit of a concern right here. Pretty much led the league last year, 15. That's not good. But he's doable at quarterback. I would like him as my second quarterback is the thing. I would like to snag one of these guys first before I go out and get Dak. Same thing really with Tua. Tua I like, but the injury concern is enough for me to say, hey, I need to go get one of these guys first. I have to. I can't. I look, you could end up going Tua as your first QB. You can basically wait on quarterback. Really, you can do it with all these guys, with Rodgers, Cousins, Geno. I mean, for the most part, Tua and Dak go before Rodgers. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's correct at all. But like Rodgers and Cousins, in my opinion, they should be going. This is why I have them ranked higher. They should be going before these guys. For the most part, though, Dak and Tua on the ADP, their ADP is higher. They go before these guys. I think that's a mistake. I think you let those guys, the other guys in your draft, take these guys over Cousins and Rodgers, and you roll the dice. Especially if you're getting these guys as your second quarterback. Don't even think about going Tua or Dak, in my opinion. Geno's a different story. I like Geno. He's very good in the pass attempt category. He's in the, you know, the good to great category. Really, you know, really in the top 10 for the most part. Yeah, he was ranked 9th overall in pass attempts last year. Red zone 77. I do maybe worry a little bit about this number now that they got Charbonnet. Pete Carroll might want to get back to the run a little bit more so this year. I don't know. Now they also got JSN too, so you know, I'm unsure about Seattle's offense this year. I don't know if they go back to maybe going more run heavy or not. I don't believe so. I think they're going to stay pretty consistent with, you know, what they did last year. So I worry about Tua and Dak more than they do Geno for the most part. Geno's got good weapons. They just added JSN. They added a good receiving, a really good all-around, all-purpose back in Charbonnet as well. So the red zone attempts, you know, we would like to see this better. Obviously, Goff had more, Rodgers had more, and he's probably going to have more this year. This is why I'm telling you, I like Rodgers over all of these guys more so, and you're going to be happy if you go get Rodgers, especially as your second QB over any of these other guys. Just trust me on this one. These numbers are going to come up because he is on a better team. That's obviously pending health. I shouldn't have to say that. I mean, if he gets hurt, this, you know, we're having a different conversation, but he's 40. He's not going to be running outside the pocket. The refs are going to protect him for the most part. He's taken a few licks in his day, so I think he'll be fine in terms of not getting injured, and he's going to be able to produce. There's too many weapons on that offense for the Jets for him not to produce, as long as they stay healthy. So these numbers are going to come up for him as well. Back to Geno, you know, 4282, almost 4,600 air yards. You know, he was top 7 in air yards rank. Had a lot of money throws, 30 TDs to 11 picks. True completion percentage, almost 74%. That's really good. That's right behind Herbert and Kyler Murray. And he was very good in, you know, his passer rating's pretty good against zone and man coverage. And he's got a little bit more rushing upside. He's got a, you know, about an average 45. No, this isn't him. Right here. 68, a little bit above average carries, 68 carries. Over 350 rushing yards, not bad. Only 1 rushing touchdown, so he didn't score the most rushing touchdowns. Obviously, he probably could have scored 2 or 3 more, but he's not a bad option. Like, really, I know, like, you know, why don't I have Geno over Tua and Cousins? Look, Tua, you could argue he could be over Tua, but I think if Tua could get a full season in, he finishes better than Geno. Okay, that's why I don't have Geno over Tua. But in terms of risk, reward, how much risk is involved, there's obviously more risk involved for Tua because of the concussions. So you could argue Geno, obviously. Goff and Jones are down here. Goff already lost Williams for 6 games. That doesn't help. Goff's gonna struggle, really. I don't say struggle. He's not gonna be as good as what he could be for the first 6 weeks. He's missing a down the field threat, and really a pretty good one, or what we think could be a pretty good one in Jameson Williams. He has elite speed, very good burst, very good over the top home run ability, and when you take that away from a quarterback, I'm just gonna be lower on somebody like Goff than I am some of these other guys ahead of him because of that, for the most part. I do think it's really the suspension helps Gibbs the most. I think Gibbs could be really good early. Gibbs is going to be really good early because of the Jameson Williams suspension. They got Marvin Jones Jr., who's 33. That's filling in for Williams on that outside for the most part. I don't think he's going to be quite really a significant factor at all. So Gibbs is going to be the guy who thrives the most from what happened with Jameson Williams and the gambling suspension. So, I'm talking about the receiving game for the most part. I expect Gibbs to come out of the gate hot, catching the ball. I really do expect that for the first 4, 5, 6 weeks. At some point, Gibbs will probably hit his rookie wall down, later down the road, but Gibbs is going to be a hot ticket early in the season, I believe. And I still like Goff to a degree, and Goff's ADP has dropped a lot. I seen Goff go like in the 140 range during a draft the other night. I'm taking him at that value, obviously, because we're talking round 11, round 12 at that point. So yeah, give me Goff in that scenario for, if he's anywhere in round 11, 12, I'll take him at that point, especially if I'm getting him as my number 2 QB. So Jones is going to come back down to earth this year. I think Goff comes down to earth a little bit this year too, not quite as much as Jones, but he doesn't pass the ball quite as much. He was outside the top 12 pass attempts ranked. Deep attempts, he doesn't have that either. Hodgins is probably their best receiver in my opinion. They also got Slayton. They're gonna continue to play through Barkley. They have to play through Barkley. Barkley can obviously catch some balls out of the backfield. He's gonna run it pretty well between the tackles. Jones stole a bunch of touchdowns from him in the run game last year. He ran it 120 times for 708, 7 rushing touchdowns, 25 red zone rushes. This is going to come down this year, I promise you. Now, is it going to come down a ton? No, but it's going to come down enough to affect his fantasy output for the year. He topped over 300 points last year in fantasy football. That's coming down. They're going to regret probably giving him the money that they gave him. I don't think he's really their franchise quarterback. Some people might give me hate for that, but he's going to come back down to earth this year. That's why he's at the bottom of the tier 3 list. Really, you could maybe argue him into tier 4 here. We'll see what happens. I could see Wilson maybe coming back up. I could see maybe Carr having a better year coming up. And maybe even Stafford if Stafford has a fully healthy season. So we're not going to talk too much about these guys. I do like Wilson to a degree. I think he could have a better season. Number 1 in deep attempts. They went out and got Marvin Mims, who's a guy who can burn down the field. They got Sean Payton as their coach. I think Wilson is going to be, he's going to have a, he's not going to win comeback player of the year, but he's going to have a better season this year. He threw for just over 3,500 yards, not the greatest. Passer rating against man's not the greatest. So Stafford, Carr are pretty close. We're just gonna have to see what happens. I think both of these guys are good options as a number 2 quarterback. Really, a number 3, it's pretty good value too. I like Pickett this year, especially if you get him late as he goes. I like Pickett as a third QB. Love, we'll have to see with Love. I'm not quite sure on Love. I am lower on Love than these guys. I just am. I gotta see it. I gotta see it first. So I gotta see it. Bryce Young and Richardson, I like them more than Stroud. Sam Howell is right here. I like Sam Howell, but he's got to get the starting spot first. Howell could come up on my list here a little bit if he gets the starting spot and if he looks decent in preseason, which I think he will. I think Sam Howell is gonna surprise some people, but Bryce Young, Richardson, I don't want them as a number 1 QB. You have to get them as a number 2 or a number 3 option, obviously. Richardson's the best guy to go for in best ball just because of his rushing upside. He could have a game where he pops off, but I do think he goes too early in best ball, but it is what it is. I've taken him a couple times, for the most part. I think I get him like at the top of or really towards the end of round 8, like in the early 90s. His ADP's been kind of falling a little bit though, so we'll see. But I would get some shares of Richardson in best ball. If I had him in a regular league, I would try to get him as my second quarterback. You're not going to get him as your third quarterback more than likely, unless you're like in an auction league where you can bid on him and bid on other guys as well. But he's gonna be okay this year in fantasy. He's not gonna be quite what people are expecting, I don't think, but down the road, especially if you can keep him, I would watch out for both of these guys for the most part, and even Stroud's also there too. I mean, they're all in this tier 4 category. So, and then really the rest of the guys, we're not even, I don't even really need to talk about these guys. They're pretty irrelevant. Kyler Murray's down here. He's going to miss most of the season. So if you're wondering where Kyler Murray is, he's down here. And that's because he's going to miss most of the season. And then they're going to have the number 1 pick. They're going to go draft a quarterback. He will not probably be a Arizona Cardinal at the end of the year. Or I should say really, once the draft starts next year, they're going to end up trading him. I'm predicting, especially if they have the number 1 pick. They're going to go Caleb Williams. They're going to move on from Kyler. Kyler can go play quarterback for maybe the Raiders, maybe somebody who needs a quarterback, maybe the Dolphins if something happens to Tua. But he will likely not be in an Arizona Cardinal uniform next year, if I had to guess. Next year is in 2024. So let's go to the running backs here. Let's just talk about the running backs. We'll go over the receivers. Actually, let's go over the running backs. We'll go over the receivers another day. I don't have the receivers quite in order. Running back rankings. Let's just go over the rankings real quick. So I'm going to stay with Bijan at 1. I know this might sound crazy to people, but I've read some articles. They're talking about, well, and look, his ADP is inside the top 10. I get it. He's got to be the number 1 or the number 2 running back to live up to his ADP. Barkley was able to do it. I think Bijan will be able to do it as well. And, I've read some articles about people talking about, well, Bijan's going to be facing 8-man fronts on a consistent basis because they're going to be trying to get Ritter to win football games, force Ritter to win football games versus them beating them with the run. Look, everybody knows what their strategy is. Everybody knows the Falcons love to run the ball, and that they're going to try to win games running the ball. They did that last year, and they were still able to run it down people's throats. There was nothing they could do about it. They have one of the easiest schedules this year. I think they have the easiest schedule. Really, it's them and like New Orleans. Their division's not that tough. Really, the best team in the division, you could probably argue, is them and New Orleans. New Orleans is probably the best, but the Panthers aren't nothing really. They're going to be able to beat the Panthers and compete with the Panthers. They're going to be able. The Bucks are going to be the worst team in the division as far as I'm concerned. They're going to be able to beat them, and they don't have a tough schedule outside of their division really. And they have a very good offensive line. They're the third best rushing team in the league last year. Really, they were like the best. If you take away, the only reason why Chicago and Baltimore were better is because they got running quarterbacks. But if you're talking about offensive line and backfield wise, who was the best rushing team in football? It was the Falcons. And they're going to be that way this year too. Now they got a better back in the backfield. They went and got a offensive lineman in the draft. I think Ritter can be okay. They have an elite receiver and an elite tight end. Hopefully he comes back and plays up to what he needs to, what he's expected to play in Kyle Pitts. But, it doesn't matter. Bijan's going to get his carries. He's going to get the yards. Trust me. I'm not, look, if a 6th round rookie and Tyler Algier can do what he did last year, I guarantee you Bijan can do the same way. The only way Bijan ends up being a bust is if he gets hurt, okay? And I don't even really factor that. I don't factor like Breece Hall. I had Breece Hall on my team. He's a keeper on my team this year. I don't consider him a bust because he missed, he played 7 games and he missed the other 10 games because of injury. He ended up tearing his ACL. It was unfortunate. There's nothing you can do about it. It doesn't mean it was a bad option for me or whatever. I made a bad choice to have him on my team. That's not what that means. If a guy gets injured or something, especially if it's like a freak injury, there's just nothing you can do about it. And it doesn't mean you made a bad pick. It just means you got unlucky. And you can't predict some of this stuff. Like nobody's going to be able to predict that Bijan gets hurt this year. He could or he couldn't. We don't know. Now, is there a high likelihood for him to get hurt over somebody like maybe like Justin Jefferson? Yeah, sure, because he plays running back and Jefferson's a receiver. But we're not factoring any of that in. He's young. He's 21, 22 years old. He's 21 this year. Very, very elite athlete at the running back position. Very elite. He has every tool in the toolbox. He's got a very good offensive line when it comes to run block, win rate, run blocking in general. They're one of the best in the league. Nobody could stop him last year. They have an easy schedule this year. They're not going to be able to stop him this year. They're, eight-man boxes or not, he's still going to be able to produce, okay? When I read that article, I was just like, whatever, this guy, I don't think this guy watched enough Atlanta football last year when he was writing that article. Because if he did, he would go back and look at, he would go back and see that all these other teams last year, they were also trying to stop them from running the ball because they knew the run was coming between Huntley, Algier, and Cordero Patterson. They had a 3-headed monster in the backfield. They were using all the guys, and guess what? Every single guy. I went over this whenever I talked about Bijan being a nuclear player. Every single guy. You're talking about Patterson and Algier. Both guys were running for like 5 yards a carry. Now they have an easier schedule, strength of a schedule. They increased, probably the likelihood of having a better offensive line in the run game. They went out and got an offensive lineman. And now they have a top 5 back in the league. Straight out of college, by the way. Who's 21 years old, who has every tool in the toolbox. You're telling me that guy's not going to be able to be efficient in this offense? You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind if you think that. You're out of your mind if you think that. A 6th rounder from BYU, Tyler Algier, was able to produce over 1,000 yards, over 1,200 yards from scrimmage. What do you think Bijan's gonna do? What do you think he's gonna? This is not even close to the same offensive line that he had at Texas. And I get it, the defenses are better in the NFL, but anyway, I'm not even gonna go on about it. Go get Bijan. He's number 1. He could maybe finish number 2 or number 3 overall, but he will finish inside the top 5, barring injury. Okay, barring injury. I shouldn't have to say that, but I'm gonna say it so that people look. If he gets a freak injury like with Breece Hall, obviously he's not gonna be top 5. Okay, we know this, but barring injury, he's top 5. He's probably top 3. I worry about McCaffrey. I worry a little bit about Eckler too. You see they're getting up there in age. I really worry about McCaffrey more than Eckler. I do like Eckler. I moved Eckler up into the top tier 1, or the top tier above Breece Hall. But Eckler got he got his contract a little bit restructured. I'm gonna say he's happier. He's ready to play this year. He's gonna be ready to play. He's gonna produce in the passing game this year, just like he does every other year. McCaffrey will produce as well, but I do worry about McCaffrey more so than just about anybody inside this top 10 when it comes to injury, because he plays for the Niners, and the Niners, they're always dealing with injuries every year. The Niners are, and they're going to lean heavily upon McCaffrey this year, especially with the quarterback situation. They're a run-heavy team anyways. I'm not saying the numbers can't be there for McCaffrey. I think he could finish as a top 3, top 2 running back, but I do worry about injury with him, and I'm drafting Bijan over him. I just am. I'm sleeping better at night if I got Bijan on my roster versus McCaffrey, and I know McCaffrey's all world. He's all time, especially in fantasy football, but I got a hunch this year, man. I got a feeling this year that I just want Bijan over McCaffrey. I just do. So, and that's just kind of my take on that. Eckler and Breece Hall really are close as well. Obviously, Breece goes in the 3rd round, and McCaffrey, Eckler, Bijan go in the 1st. I know what you guys are thinking. Where's Chubb? Where's Pollard? Where's Taylor? Where's Barkley? They're down here, and I stand by this decision to have these guys down here. I think Breece, I think Najee, I think Stevenson, they all end up finishing better. We go to our board here. And obviously Breece's numbers are going to be a little bit outliered compared to everybody else's because he only played 7 games. So obviously only 80 rushing attempts. Snap shares down, the opportunity shares down. The opportunity share was coming though. It was coming. He was getting it those last 2 weeks, and then really into the week 7 against Denver where he got hurt. It was coming. He was about to be the number 1 guy pretty much as far as the volume was coming, and he was on the road to being the best running back in fantasy football, or at least a top 3. I don't know if he would have quite unseated McCaffrey, but he was there. He was going to be there inside the top 5 easily if he stayed healthy the rest of the year. Target share, he's still in a good category here at 13.1% target share amongst all the running backs. And the real kicker here is this number. This is, you guys see this? Yeah, you guys can't see it. Okay, it's over here on the right side. Let me just hide the camera real quick. So this is where it's at, over here on the right side. You can see where my mouse is over here on the far right side. This is the yards created per touch. He was the 3rd best. You guys can't see the rank. It's over here to the right of, it's off the screen. But he was the 3rd best running back in yards created per touch. 4.32. This number is very significant amongst running backs. How many yards did they create? How many did they create per touch? Obviously, he didn't create the most because he only played 7 games. But how much are they creating per touch? The guys that are high in this category, efficient in this category, are guys that have not fallen off. They're guys that have a lot of juice in the tank. They can make people miss. They still have their quickness and their ability to be a good running back. If we go down, this right here, this guy, this 1.42, who's in the very, very poor category, who's ranked 54th amongst all running backs. You know who this guy is? This is Zeke Elliott. Zeke Elliott is all the way down here in yards created per touch. He's fallen off. He's over the cliff. He finished 54th amongst all running backs in yards created per touch. So this is why I like Breece Hall. He's third best in yards created per touch. He's ahead of schedule. He had the surgery. He's ahead of schedule in terms of coming back and being ready for this year. So this is why I got Breece Hall inside the top 5. So I have him as the 4th best running back on my list. He's too good to not be up there. Now, obviously, he's got to get a full season in. We hope that he gets a full season in, but this is why I got Breece Hall. He's in this tier 1 category. Believe me. He was on his way. He was on his way to being a top 5, probably top 3 running back if he didn't get hurt. I don't think anybody can argue that. Nobody's going to argue that. And if they do, then they don't know what they're talking about. He was like the number 2 or number 3 running back in the league in fantasy at the time before he got hurt. So Najee Harris, obviously, people might question this. I got him top 5. First guy in tier 2, Stevenson. And then obviously here's Barkley, here's Taylor, here's Pollard. A lot of people might look. Najee has this. He's in the elite category in terms of rushing attempts. This could easily eclipse 300 this year. He was top 5 last year, obviously. Snap share, opportunity shares there. They went and got pieces on the offensive line. They went and got pieces in free agency and in the draft. I know he averaged 3.8, 3.9, and 3.9 yards per carry the last 2 years. The only 2 years he's been in the NFL for the most part. But at Alabama, he was averaging 5.5 every single year. Okay? He needs an offensive line. They went and got pieces for him. They want to get back to running the ball, smash mouth football between the tackles. He's a 6'1", 232-pound monster who's going to be able to carry the workload between the tackles. And if the offensive line improves, which is what they tried to go do this offseason, you're going to have to look out for this guy. I know, and here's the thing. You can get him in the 3rd round. Really can get him in the 4th round, maybe, early 4th, especially on underdog. Obviously, his ADP is climbing, it's climbing. I should say it's getting lower, really. It's getting lower to where he's going sooner. So maybe the value's not quite there anymore. People are starting to learn about him and exactly why, you should maybe be on the lookout for him. So he's going earlier now, but you could have got him in the 4th round easily 2-3 weeks ago. But he's looking to be probably about a 3rd rounder, which is still very, very good value for somebody like Harris. 10 touchdowns. He was top 10 last year. He quietly had a decent season. Quietly. I say that. But here you go. The true yards per carry. Also, I didn't even talk about true yards per carry, but if you look here at Breece Hall, you look over here at Breece Hall. Breece Hall was 5.3 true yards per carry. True yards per carry is it's basically yards per carry minus any of the runs that were 10 plus yards down the field. They take away all the big plays to give you a truer yards per carry, basically a more true yards per carry. That's why they call it true yards per carry. But that's another reason why you should like Breece Hall. Obviously, Najee's down here in the red. Not good. Under 4 is obviously not good. Really, 4.2, 4.4, which is where McCaffrey and Eckler are. That's about average. That's league average for the most part. That's why it's not really red or green. This is a result, though, of Najee's offensive line. Okay? We know what he can do when he's got a good offensive line, i.e. going back to Alabama. 5.5 yards per carry every single season, or better. And we know his offensive line's been atrocious the last 2 years. They've ranked bottom 5 to bottom 10 the last 2 years. He's got evaded tackles, though. He was one of the best evaded tacklers. So he's got the evaded tackle rate. You look right here at his yards created per touch. Let me scroll over. His yards created per touch is in the elite category, 3.43. Not quite as good as somebody like Breece Hall. Or take that back. I'm looking at the wrong guy. It's 2.13, but this, like I said, this is back to his offensive line being bad. Who is this? This is I think this is Barkley, right? No, this is Stevenson. Yeah, Stevenson's obviously really good in the yards created per touch. But this is going to come up. This is going to I know I said yards created per touch is, if it's bad, it's somebody who's fallen off. There's different circumstances for certain running backs. Najee Harris has not fallen off. He's getting the workload. He's getting the opportunity share. He's breaking the tackles. He's evaded 113 tackles last year. He can evade the tackles. If he had low evaded tackle, percentage, if he didn't have a whole lot of evaded tackles, he had bad yards created, and let's just say he had an average offensive line or even a decent, that's somebody who's fallen off, obviously. This is a different scenario. This is a different scenario for Najee. So, going down the list here some more. Ramondre, let's go Ramondre, Barkley, Taylor, and Pollard. Let's go to the last 4 guys here that are in tier 2. I know what a lot of people are thinking right now. Why is Josh Jacobs down here in tier 3 when he led the league in rushing? We'll get to him in a moment, but I'll explain why he's down there in a moment. But let's go over the last few guys here in tier 2. So Stevenson, Barkley, Pollard. Stevenson, once again, he's getting the full workload this year now that Damian Harris is out of town. 210 carries. That's not bad. That's in your above average, amongst all running backs. It's not in the purple category quite. Where does this go this year if he stays healthy? I could see about 230, 240, maybe 250. We'll see. But the reason why he's up here is because of his receiving ability. He's got good snap share, good opportunity share. This is only going to get better now that Harris is gone, because this is last year. 89 targets, 69 catches over here. That was 4th best in the league amongst all running backs. Target share, this is key. He's in the purple here. This is the elite category. There's only a handful of them. But this is McCaffrey. This is Eckler. Well, here's Stevenson and Barkley at 17.3, 17.2%. That's very good for a running back. The guys that are good in this category produce in fantasy football, especially if you're in full PPR. It's like really good. Those are the guys you got to go get. 3rd most targets amongst all running backs. Only Eckler and McCaffrey had more, obviously. Red zone touches. This is going to increase. 38's not bad. It's in the green, but it's going to increase now that Harris is gone. Harris was the guy that was basically getting the workload inside the 10-yard line, or really inside the red zone for the most part. They gave Ramondre some touches, but let's go find Damian Harris. Where's Damian Harris? He's all the way down here. Let's see how many Damian Harris had. Where is this guy at? Here he is. He's right here. 44. So Damian Harris had 17, right? 17. That's because he missed time, though. But that's 17 more that could be going to Stevenson. I would say he gets about 10 to 15 of those. Maybe a couple more, maybe a couple of those go somewhere else. So one of the other running backs. But you're talking 10 to 15 more. That would be, you're talking 48 to 50 roughly red zone touches. That would be That would be better than just about everybody except Jamal Williams. Obviously, Eckler. And then Kenneth Walker had 52 last year, but Kenneth Walker's numbers are probably going to come down now that Charbonnet's in town. So this is good for him. Well, if he gets anything above 40, this is going to be good for him in fantasy this year. This is why he's one of our nuclear men. This is why I'm really high on him this year. Receiving yards also, this could get over 500. So route participation in the green. He's running routes whenever they are passing the ball. He's heavily involved in the passing game. And then his yards is his yards created per touch is in the elite category, 3.43. So that's why Stevenson's there. Barkley's also pretty good. I'm a little less. I'm a little lower on him than maybe some other people. I do like Najee and Stevenson better. It's very, very close. Very, very close. Barkley was 4th best in rush attempts. Or no, he's 4th best in rushing yards, 4th best in rush attempts as well. Very highly involved, almost 80% opportunity and snap share. Obviously 80.1 in opportunity share. I just worry. I don't say I worry about injury with Barkley. I worry more that he's on an offense that's not quite as good. I do like that they use him a lot, but with the injury that he's had, the injury history that he's had, he's getting up there in age a little bit. He's not quite there. He's 26, but he's close. He's close to that age where you're like, maybe he's got a year or two left. We'll see. That's why they're hesitant to give him this contract. That also plays a factor too. The contract situation, how motivated is he going to be because they're not giving him his money? I do think he is deserving of it, but at the same time, I understand why the organization would want to be hesitant to give him the money because of his injury history. He's getting older. We know these running backs fall off at some point, and they use him a lot. They use him a lot last year. His yards created per touch is in the yellow here, 2.88. That could be better, especially considering the volume that he got last year. We would expect that to be over 3. Which would put him close to the elite category. Actually, I think, yeah, the elite category is basically... It's basically anything that's over... Or no, the elite category is like 330 or more. If he would have been... if he would have been in this 290 to, 2.99, 2.9 to 3 to 3.1, he would be in the pretty good above average category. But so this is a little concerning that his yards created per touches, it's decent, but it was ranked 22nd in the league last year, ranked 22nd amongst all running backs, and that's coming from a guy who was the 4th best leading rusher as far as rushing attempts and rush yards goes, and he had a high snap share, high opportunity share, really the highest snap share, I believe. I'm looking to see if there's anybody else. Kamara had 80. Kamara was actually number 1. Barkley was number 2. Opportunity share, he was top 5 though as well. So he can still catch the ball in the backfield a little bit. Obviously, he's very good at that. 17.2 target share, 76 targets, not bad. That's 6th best in the league amongst all running backs. Red zone touches, we'd like to see more than this, but that's because Daniel Jones was stealing touchdowns from him last year. So hopefully that increases this year if you're a Barkley owner. Receiving yards, he's in the, he's close to an elite category. Obviously, there's only a handful of elite guys, and that was McKinnon, Kamara, and then obviously McCaffrey and Eckler were leading the way in that category last year. But this is why I'm a little lower on Barkley, man. And maybe you can attribute his yards created per touch, which is this number right here. Maybe you can attribute that to maybe his offensive line not being quite as good. I know they lost Evan Neal at some point during the season. I'm trying to think of when they lost him. I forget, but I know they lost him. And obviously, what doesn't really help him at all in this, you know, and I wouldn't say he's fallen off because this number is where it's at. I would just say really it's the offense. He's probably facing a lot of 8-man boxes. A lot of teams know that they like to run the ball with him and establish the offense with him. And that's because he doesn't have quite as good of a quarterback as some of these other guys that we're talking about. And so the focus is on him. The defense is focusing their attention on him, and they would rather see Daniel Jones beat them with his arm. And so that's why I'm a little lower on Barkley than I am these other guys. Taylor, I moved Taylor down, obviously. I had Taylor a little higher. He's one that has really moved down my list, and that's just because of Richardson. I think Richardson is going to hurt Taylor a lot, especially if he ends up starting the year. If he ends up playing a lot, it's going to hurt Taylor. I don't think the Colts are going to be quite as good this year either. They weren't very good last year. I don't think they're going to be quite as good this year either. I think they'll be a little better than last year, but not much. Maybe 2 or 3 more wins if they're lucky, but you know, ankle surgery went really good for Taylor, so you know, I think he'll be okay to getting back to what he was. He's not going to be that number 1 running back that we seen 2 years ago, though. He's not going to be that this year. Just, I'm warning you guys, it's not going to happen. Don't expect it. I would not expect it. And Richardson doesn't target running backs very well out of the backfield. He never did, at least in college, so we can presume that's going to carry over to the NFL a little bit. You look at this, 40 targets, 28 were catches. This could come down, and 28's not good, ladies and gentlemen. 28 is not good, okay? And I get it. He was injury plagued last year. Anybody that owned this guy, they were losing their mind. They were absolutely going crazy, but we would like to see more catches, you know what I mean? Especially from this guy, and I just don't think you're going to see it this year. I don't think you're going to see it this year. So if he's not going out and getting you 1,500 yards on the ground, and he's being drafted as RB3, RB4 for the most part, I think that's a little too high for him. And I get why people want to take him, but at the same time, I'm taking Eckler. I'm probably taking McCaffrey over him, even though I worry about injury of him, and I'm definitely taking Bijan over him. And that's right where this guy's going. He's going at the beginning of round 2 for the most part in the best ball leagues, and I would rather have these 3 guys over him. I just would. I would also probably rather, and I would rather have Breece Hall over him too, who's also behind him, well behind him in the ADP category. So you could maybe even, I could make an argument for Pollard, even though I got Pollard behind him. I could make an argument for Pollard and Chubb and Derrick Henry probably too. You can make an argument for all these guys, really these 4 guys that are under him. I think I would probably rather have him over Jacobs and Walker and Etienne and everybody else on down, but you could make a case for these other guys right here: Gibbs, Henry, Chubb, Pollard. You can make a case for them, and it's close, you know. It's close, but he's not in the top 5, and he's being drafted in the top 5. He's being drafted as the 4th best, maybe even the 3rd best running back. Roughly, depends. Sometimes he'll go before Eckler, but not as often anymore, I don't think so. But he's a guy that I'm a little worried about, man. I'm worried about him not getting the receiving game that we're maybe accustomed to him getting, especially 2 years ago when he was RB number 1. The offensive line maybe gets better hopefully this year, but he obviously the injuries didn't help last year, but this was with a good offensive line last year. At least what we thought was a good offensive line. I know they didn't play the greatest, but 4.42 yards created per touch. That's not good. It's in the gray. That's not good. So that's like average for those. Well, wouldn't say it's average. It's like a little bit below average for the most part. And I know Najee is down here in this category too. He's in this same, but Najee's different. Najee literally does not have an offensive line. He has not had an offensive line for the most part since he's been in the NFL. And they went out and got pieces for him on the offensive line in free agency and in the draft. And Najee has been relatively injury free. I know he had the Liz Frank last year, the partial Liz Frank, but he still played every single game. This guy, Jonathan Taylor, did not. So we had somebody drop Jonathan Taylor in fantasy last year, like week 12 or 13 or whatever it was. They were sick of this guy being a game time decision and then not playing. They dropped this guy. And I have a league that's not really a grandma league. It's an auction league. It's got a lot of guys who really, the guy that dropped him is one of the better players he is one of the better teams in the league. And really, I don't blame him for dropping him. He wasn't going to keep him anyways this year. He was going to be too expensive, especially for what he did last year. But the route, and the route participation's decent, 56.4% here, but Richardson doesn't target his running backs. Go back and look. He does not target his running backs in the receiving game. At least back at Florida, he did not do that. So maybe that changes. Maybe he does target Taylor a little more this year than what he was doing at Florida. We don't know. We really don't know. We're not going to know until we see it. But if I had to guess, I'm just bringing Taylor down a little bit from where he's at. He's still in my top 10 at the 8 position, but I'm moving him down from top 4, top 5. I just think it's a little too high. Pollard, let's get to Pollard. I worry about Pollard a little bit. We'll see what happens here this week if they go sign Zeke or if they go sign Fournette for like a cheap deal. I still think they're going to go do that. Really, Ronald Jones is kind of their big back that's between the tackles, but he's the 4th stringer. He's behind Deuce Vaughn on the depth chart, so I could see them getting Zeke again. I could see them signing Zeke to like a $1-2 million contract for this year, for cheap, and then his ADP is gonna go down, or it's gonna go up or down. Whatever, it's gonna go later. His ADP he's gonna move back in the draft if they end up signing Fournette or Zeke. Even if it is for like a $1 or $2 million deal and really they don't end up playing a huge major role, people are going to see that and they're going to be, oh, I got to stay away from Pollard now. So there could be some value with Pollard, honestly, if they end up signing Zeke or Fournette. He could move down the ADP list. You might be able to get him like middle of the round 3 or even the end of round 3 for the most part, maybe, if that happens. And I think that could actually be partially a steal for the most part. I think his ADP is okay where it's at, which is kind of like late 2nd, early 3rd round, depending on who drafts him. But rushing attempts isn't over 200 yards. I worry, he didn't have more than 200 carries. I worry about that. That was 23rd. That was 23rd in the. Jonathan Taylor almost had more carries than him, and Taylor missed like how many games? So that the snap share and the opportunity share is going to come up, obviously, even if Zeke or Fournette or whoever, Kareem Hunt, even if they sign somebody, or even if they don't, let's just say they don't sign anybody, it's obviously going to come up. But he's a change of pace back, okay? He can run between the tackles a little bit, but he's not Bijan. He's not Bijan. He's not Breece Hall. He's not Najee Harris. He's not Derrick Henry. And somebody like him can only run between the tackles so many times. He's not going to get this 272, this 295, this 302. Obviously, not very many people at all are getting the 349 that Henry got, but he's not getting more than 250 carries between the tackles. And if he does, he's going to get hurt because his body's not built for that. Give me about 210 carries for Pollard this year if he stays healthy, maybe 215. And really, if you own him, you're looking for this. You're looking for the 300. Really, you're looking for about 4 to 450 receiving yards This target share will come up. It's at 10.9, almost 11%, which is about average. A little bit average to close to above average. You know, it's in the yellow. It's not blue or purple, so it's not super good. But this will 55 targets, 39 catches. You're hoping he gets at least 55 catches this year. You know, if he stays healthy, because that's what he's going to need to meet this ADP value and to be inside the top 10. So if he stays healthy, I think he reaches that mark. But I wouldn't look. And he's a very efficient runner. He's a very good runner. Let's go look at what his yards created per touch were. They were 3.3, so they were really good. So you can, this is elite. This is elite yards created per touch. So he still has the juice. He's not going to be the guy between the tackles that you might hope he will be, or you might think he could be. But he's going to produce in the receiving game, and he's got big playability when he's out in space. And so I do like Pollard. This is why he's in the top 10. This is why he's in the top 10, and I stand by that. I worry a little bit because I don't like Mike McCarthy calling the plays, and you know, I worry maybe if they go get another running back to a degree, but I don't worry too much. He will be the focal point. He will be the guy, and we just gotta, if you own him or if you have shares of him, you just gotta hope he stays healthy, because he is like a 210-pound back. He's not that 220 or more, which is ideal. It's ideally what you want at the RB position, especially if they are a workhorse, you know, an all-purpose back. So Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, Gibbs. I'm gonna try to go through these guys a little faster. Chubb, Henry, Gibbs, Walker. I have them over Jacobs. You could maybe argue Jacobs over Walker. I'm not putting Jacobs over Gibbs, Henry, or Chubb, though. I think I worry about, obviously, Chubb and Henry a little bit. That's why they're down here on the list. They are getting older. They are running the ball to the elite, you know, they're in the elite category as far as rushing attempts and stuff like that, and they've been in the league for a while. I worry about injury, you know, especially Henry. He's going to be 30 this year, but I think there's decent value with Henry. Chubb, I think, is going a smidge too high. Chubb's going to have to get you that 1,500 yards on the ground is the thing, and if he doesn't, you're gonna wish that he did. Chubb's got decent, really Henry's got decent yards created per touch last year, so they haven't really quite fallen off yet. Chubb's obviously a little bit ahead, or Henry's a little bit ahead as far as falling off, maybe sooner. And his offensive line is not very good, so I would take Chubb over Henry if I had to choose. Obviously, at this point, I'm getting Stevenson and Hall, I'm getting Breece Hall and Stevenson over these guys. That doesn't mean I don't like these guys. I just like those guys better, and I'm drafting them. I might, you know, whenever the puppies come out again, I like the puppy 2. I might go for Breece, or not Breece Hall. I might go for Nick Chubb a couple of times. But I do worry about, especially Derrick Henry. I worry about injury, man, and I worry about his offensive line not being good. Chubb doesn't really have that issue. His offensive line is better, obviously, and really the offense in general is better than Henry. That's why I have Chubb over Henry. Gibbs, I don't have any stats or anything really, because he's a rookie, just like with Bijan. I do like Gibbs in the receiving game. Like I said, I think he explodes. I really think he explodes the first few weeks. Now, that doesn't mean he's better than all these other guys if he starts playing better than them, say, out the gate the first 3 or 4 weeks. But with Williams being suspended, they're going to have to make up for that somewhere, and it's going to go to Gibbs, in my opinion. I do worry about Montgomery being in the backfield with him. He's going to take over the Jamal Williams role. He's going to be getting all the goal line carries. But Gibbs is going to be good in PPR. If you're playing in standard, which I don't know who would be doing that nowadays, obviously I would stay away from Gibbs, especially at his ADP, but go play half PPR or full PPR and just take Gibbs as your second running back. I don't think he should be a first running back. If people are drafting him as their first running back, I think it's a mistake. He should be your second guy. because you're drafting Bijan as your first running back, and he's not Bijan. He's just not. And I know he's going to get the receiving game, but Bijan's going to be okay in the receiving game too. Plus, he's going to have a 1,400 yard rushing year probably, if I had to guess. He's going to have at least 1,200, I would say. I don't think Gibbs even sniffs 1,000 yards rushing the ball. He might actually end up having more receiving yards than he does rushing yards, if I had to guess. It's going to be close, but there is good upside with Gibbs, though, in a dynasty, obviously. In a dynasty, I'm drafting him over a lot of these guys in front of him. We can talk about maybe dynasty another time. I'm not going to really hit too much on it. I've mostly focused on auction, and obviously we're doing a lot of redraft as of late, just because we've done more redraft stuff. I will get into the auction stuff. I actually need to check to see if they put auction values out on Sleeper. I haven't really checked in a while. Jacobs is down here. We'll just kind of skip over Walker. We know what Walker is. I think he's decent. It sucks that they went and got Charbonnet, especially if you're an owner, which I am, obviously, in the auction league. He's obviously slid down my list. He was up here inside the top 10. He's down here almost outside the top 15 now. And that's just because of... It's just because they went and got Charbonnet, and it's, you know, it's tough. It's tough to have him higher when you know that Charbonnet is going to be involved. And they also have a really good passing attack as well. And so I like Walker, but I think he's a decent value. I really think he's a decent value right now in redraft. His ADP's fallen like damn near 20 spots, maybe even more than 20 spots since the you know, them going out and drafting Charbonnet. But you know, we know what he is. I do have him over Jacobs. You could maybe argue Jacobs this year, but let's get to Jacobs. We're gonna finish off with Jacobs, and then I might do a stream later tonight. We'll finish this up and maybe go over some other receivers. We'll see, but I'll finish this with Jacobs. We'll end on Jacobs, and then we'll end the stream, and I'm going to tell you why Jacobs is down here. Jacobs is down here because he's on a bad team. He's going to face a ton of 8-man boxes this year. Garoppolo is terrible. Teams are going to force Jimmy G to beat them. And I got a news flash for you. Jimmy G is not very good. And this is why Devontae Adams was really unhappy with what the Raiders are doing. That's why he's unhappy right now. It's in the media right now about how unhappy he is with the way that this offense is going, the way that this franchise is going about things. And the Raiders are a bad franchise. They've always been a bad franchise for a while. And they have a bad head coach in Josh McDaniels. He's not a good head coach at all. He's a good offensive coordinator, but he's a bad head coach, okay? Bottom line. And this team is going to suck this year. They're going to suck so bad. I'm telling you right now, whatever I believe the team wins, the over-under for total wins this year was like 7.5 on DraftKings, maybe 6.5 other places. There's an alternate line I seen on DraftKings at 5.5. Take the under. It was like plus 195, almost 2-to-1 odds. Take the under on their total wins this year at 5.5. They're not winning more than 5 games this year. They've one of like the top 5 toughest schedules in the league this year, and they're a terrible team that plays in the AFC West. They're going to get their ass kicked all up and down the field this year. Jimmy G will be lucky if he even finishes the whole season without getting hurt. He gets hurt like every year. He can't throw the ball accurately down the field. I'll get to that in a minute. But let's finish off with Jacobs here. I know he was the leading rusher last year, okay? I know he had the second most rushing attempts behind Henry. Highly involved in snap share, opportunity share. 65 targets. 45 red zone touches. Caught 53 of 65 balls. Top 10 in that category. 400 yards receiving. 55% route participation. And then his yards created are 3.14, which is very good. It means he's got juice in the tank. But this offense is not very good. He's going to be facing more 8-man boxes than he's ever seen in his life. And he might get the volume, but is he going to be able to produce? Think Najee Harris for the most part. Najee Harris gets the volume, but is he able to produce thoroughly the last 2 years? To a degree, but not to the level that we were expecting because of what he did last year. He's not going to be able to repeat this performance. When was the last time we seen a running back repeat as the number one running back from the year prior? The closest guy to do it was like Henry, and Henry wasn't really the number one back. He was like the number 3 or the number 2 back the one year, and then 2020 he was like the number 4 back. He was top 5 both years. He's really the only guy in recent memory at the running back spot to really finish very, very, very good and then do it again the very next year. He's not doing it this year because this team's not built for him to do it this year. He's going to get the volume. I do worry about injury because they're going to try to use him as much as they can. They're going to be falling behind on the scoreboard. They're going to be passing the ball more. And I know he's involved in the passing game, but people are going to force Jimmy G to throw the ball down the field and beat them. And newsflash, Josh Jacobs isn't running. He's not running 20-yard routes. He's a running back. He's going to be running out into the flat, running Texas routes. He's not a guy who's running down the field. So, yeah, he might get a couple catches here and there, and he might do okay in the receiving department, but you're going to be hard-pressed to see him break, I would say, 1,100 yards rushing this year. You're not going to see this number right here. You're not going to see that again this year. And I don't hope for him to get injured, but you might see a little bit of injury concern. He might get banged up this year because they're going to be trying to use him, and teams are going to be honing in on what the Raiders are trying to do on offense. And like I said, they're going to fall behind. They're going to be losing a lot of games. They're going to be trying to throw the ball more to catch up. They're going to be and then when they are using him as much as they want, they're going to be, they know he's one of the focal points of the offense. They're going to be stacking the box against him, and their offensive line isn't the greatest. Really, their offense in general is not the greatest, and they have a really tough schedule this year. They're going to be bad. Let's go to Jimmy G. I'll get to Jimmy G. I got Jimmy G down here. Here he is. You see all this red right here? You guys see all this red? You know, you guys can't see my player notes, but he's do not draft. Here he is, passer rating 87.6 against the zone. He's a little bit better versus man coverage, 102.4. True completion percentage 71.1. That's about average. Look at his accuracy rating though. This is a key figure right here, accuracy rating. This is how accurate are targets to the receivers. Anything that's like 8 or better is really good. It's like really good. It's like top tier. So Burrow 8.3, Jalen Hurts 8, Mahomes 7.6. Really, you know, but you see this 8, 7.8, 7.8. This is Tua 7.8, Kirk Cousins 7.8, Rodgers, Watson not quite as good 7.4. This is Jimmy G's 7.1 down here in the red. He's not an accurate passer. This is why, and look, the Raiders are going to suck this year. So going back to Josh Jacobs at 14th. This is why. Look, he's coming down. He's coming down to earth this year. You're not going to see this number this year. I don't even think you're going to see this many rushing attempts this year because they're going to be falling behind in a lot of games. They're going to be forced to pass the ball. Can he get maybe 280, 270, 280? Sure. Maybe even 290. We'll have to see. That's barring he doesn't miss any games. He hasn't fallen off the earth. He's not a bad running back, but he's in a bad offense with a bad head coach, a bad franchise. Offensive line's really not the greatest. He's going to be seeing a lot of 8-man boxes this year. He's being drafted, I would say, a little too high. I'm glad that he's in the 3rd round, but I would say he should maybe be into the 3rd round, maybe even the 4th round. I'm glad he's not going in round 2 or round 1 though. That just tells you something though. Like the fact that he's not going in round 1 and redraft on Underdog, on DraftKings, on any of these sites where we're doing best balls, the fact that he's not going in the first round, that like people got to be saying to themselves, why is he not going? Like, why are people not higher on him? Because they know he's not doing this again. Even the average Joe, the casual player, they know he's not early round 2 material. I've seen him go early round 2 before, but it never happens. It's rare. And so you could, like I said, you could argue him over Walker, maybe even Gibbs as well, but I'm taking Gibbs, I'm taking Henry, I'm taking Cho, I'm taking Pollard, I'm taking all of these guys over him. I just am. So, and let's just wrap it up right there. I will go over ETN all the way down to about, I'm not going to go all the way down to 75. We might hit on some of these rookies that are down here. I still haven't even completed the stats for these guys yet. I need to do that. Yeah, I need to do that at some point. But we'll go over some of these rookies. We can talk about anything as far as like dynasty value. I'm telling you right now, though, look out for this guy, Chase Brown. Okay, he is the running back out of Illinois. Plays for the Bengals. You might see the Bengals cut Joe Mixon this week. I have tons of shares of him on Underdog already for the best ball drafts. Watch out for this guy because he's going to skyrocket if they cut Mixon this week. He will be the presumptive #1 running back on the depth chart at that point. This guy ran for over 1,600 yards last year at Illinois, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield. So just fair warning you guys on him. I think Bigsby's going to be pretty decent this year too. Johnson can be okay. Roschon Johnson can be okay, but we're going to have to... You're going to have to see some injuries for Roschon to really get his opportunity. He would be decent in Dynasty, obviously, maybe down the road. I expect somebody like Bigsby and Chase Brown, especially if Mixon gets cut, they're going to blossom a little more in fantasy before somebody like Roschon. But we'll talk more about those guys. We'll talk about these guys from 15 on down, probably down into like the 40, the 40th spot here roughly. And then we'll hit on some of the rookies if we do a stream later tonight or tomorrow. So, we got tomorrow off. Luckily, Veterans Day, or not Veterans Day, Memorial Day. So shout out to all of those out there who have had family members who have given their life, given the ultimate sacrifice for this country. And I want to thank all of those individuals out there. I'm a veteran, so, I know how much it means to serve the country. And luckily, I made it out of Afghanistan alive. I made it through my 4 years in the Marine Corps, pretty much unscathed. So I had a great grandpa who served in World War II. He actually made it out of World War II alive, and he died like about a decade back ago. But yeah, just shout out to all those families out there who have had, family members who have lost their lives and given the ultimate sacrifice for us to enjoy the freedom that we enjoy today. So be thinking about those people tomorrow, today and tomorrow for the most part. And so with that being said, man, I will catch you guys maybe later tonight. We'll finish up these running backs. We might go into the receivers as well in fantasy football. And I thank you guys for tuning in. And like I said, if you guys have comments, of anything, concerning anything in fantasy football, feel free to ask me. I'm not super new to this. I am new, obviously, to being on YouTube, to being on Twitch. I've been doing fantasy since about like 08, 09-ish, roughly towards the end of my high school career. So not quite as long as other people, but I do have knowledge. I do have, stats that we can go over. I can tell you exactly what we're looking for certain players, certain positions, and just my general opinion on some of these other stuff. And we might have some disagreements, along the way, but we will learn. And, I respect other people's opinions, and I can understand if there's other opinions out there that are different than mine, and especially if there's stats and other things to back it up, and we can discuss all that stuff. But if you guys have any questions, just let me know, in the comment section below, and we can, you know, we can address whatever you guys want to address. It doesn't even have to be you know, fantasy related. It could just be just football related in general. So also, if you guys where's this at? If you guys haven't already, go ahead and follow me on social media on some of these social media sites. It doesn't have to be every single one. If you guys prefer one or the other, I'm on Facebook, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Twitter as well. And then subscribe to the YouTube channel also, so you guys can stay up to date on anytime I go live, anytime I drop videos and stuff. We need to work on some videos tonight. I don't really have anything scheduled coming up, but we will be working on some of those tonight as well. Like I said, we might do another stream tonight as well and finish up these running backs and maybe dive into the receivers a little bit. So I try to go live as often as I can on the weekdays and on the weekends. So I do have a full-time job. I work 5 days a week, so it's a little tough, but we try to make it work as much as we can. And yeah, man, I'll catch you guys maybe later tonight or tomorrow. If not tonight, for sure tomorrow at some point for at least an hour or two. And we will finish up going over the rankings for the running backs, dissecting why they're ranked where they're at. And we might dive into the wide receivers as well. So with that being said, man, I hope you guys have a really good day, and we will catch you guys probably later tonight at some point or tomorrow. So have a good one. I am out of here. We'll catch you guys later.